Anyone who has taken part in Judge Judy, either as a party to a claim or as a part of the audience, what was it like? Any interesting / funny stories about what happens in between the cameras rolling? I was never on her show, but she presided over my first hearing as a law student in New York in 1977. I was working as a student law guardian defending alleged juvenile delinquents in the Manhattan Family Court. My very first case was a young fellow who jumped over a turnstile in a subway station with a loaded .38. The court was going to throw the book at him, pending the probation department *S report, which was probably going to be bad. I offered to take him home, rather than having him spend more time in the grim juvenile facility known as Spofford. There was a bit of an uproar. Papers flew and tempers flared. But the judge decided that this was a pretty neat idea. He slept on the floor of my wife's and my tiny 17x11-foot student apartment on Washington Square for 10 nights. We got him a social security card, a green card and a job. 30 days later, the judge expunged his record. Decades later I walked into the kitchen of our home in California and a small TV was on, and I heard a voice I had never forgotten. I looked at the screen and there she was, Judge Judy. Maybe 15 years ago my best friend bought a bunch of Magic the Gathering cards on eBay and when they came in, the majority of the high value cards were missing. This was like a $400-500 order and for a high school kid, the missing cards were a major issue. This dragged on for months when they finally got Judge Judy involved. Surprisingly, the show got back to my friend right away asking if he was serious about all of this, because if he wanted to move forward they were ready to make contact with the other party. I believe the deal was something like they both would be flew to California, sign over any rights to really sue over this. Judy would make her decision, and both sides would get like $300 for their time. My friend was over the moon about all of this. Turns out when the letter got to the other party in this case they immediately offered a full refund for the cards. I still wish this would have gone all the way, if only to hear my friend Bob explaining Magic the Gathering to Judge Judy. Don't mix eBay and Magic, they're gathering kids. Not even once. There was an episode for Yu-Gi-Oh cards where the guy was trying to explain why the cards were worth so much money. In the end I don't think the judge really understood why the cards were worth so much. But he had receipts and recent listings for the same card in the same grade, so they ruled in his favor. Didn't go in the show, but met her at an event a few years ago. She's teeny tiny, and every bit as terrifying in person as on camera. That personality is not an act. She yelled at my husband to hurry up as I posed for a picture with her. She scared him so much, he dropped the phone and I have an awesome picture of blurry carpet to show for the interaction. A guy from my high school knocked over some guy's motorcycle and being a punk kid, tried to run away without paying damages. The motorcycle owner sued him and his dad for the insurance deductible. Well, before the show, he's boasting about how he won't take her shit and he'll tell her off. After the show, he wouldn't talk about it. When the show aired, she made him cry. Last year my girlfriend was on Judge Judy and I was her witness because she didn't want to go alone. About 4 years prior her boyfriend at the time convinced her to give him $5,000 for a truck and she was smart enough to put her name on the title. Fast forward a couple years and they're broken up and her ex someone weasels his way through Secretary of State, forges her signature and gets her off the title. The funny part was that we were suing in our district court and Judge Judy producers contacted us, paid us for the 3-day trip, flight to LA, and the hotel on Sunset, even gave us each $75 for food. My girlfriend spent a month preparing all of her papers and stressing about what she would say and how to respond to Judy. The day comes and we roll on set with a stack of papers and we see her ex come in and he has a single torn strip of paper. This is when I knew it was over for them. Not even 2 minutes into my GF explaining what happened, Judy hones in on her ex, calls the guy's mother up to the stand with them, and proceeds to roast the S out of them, calling the grifters and half-wits. She let the dude say about 10 words before she promptly cut him off and said judgment for the plaintiff in the order of $5,000. Kinda sad that the show pays the $5,000 and that little S got off for free. but the public humiliation was definitely a perk. Filming was quick. About 10 to 15 minutes of shooting, and about 2 hours of waiting in a back room beforehand. It was unscripted. A lot of fun even though I had to see the guy who assaulted me. There's a good couple months of build up to the whole thing, where they tell you the accused is calling you a liar and all this stuff. They gave my dad like $20 for being on with me, but gave me like $4,000. Someone said that everything is decided beforehand, but that wasn't my experience. She is the arbitrator of the case. They make it very clear in the contract, which I still have. I really wish I could find my episode. Edit. More interesting things I didn't mention people might find interesting. They contacted me after I filed the case in claims court. I was originally planning on filing for the full amount of damages I could, about $9,000, but they can only deal with small claims cases, so I agreed to take the lower amount. It guarantees payment instead of hoping that the accused actually pays what they owe. The audience are all paid actors. I had brought people hoping they could be in the audience, but they watched from the green room. She shares a set with Judge Joe Brown. They just swap out the sets. It's super dusty on set. I'm guessing they keep it like that so nothing shines in the camera. Second edit. It looks like the episode may be season 14 episode 246, if anyone has contacts or recordings. I met her in real life in 2013 or 14. I'm a journalist. I was scheduled to interview her at 9 AM in the lobby of a very plush hotel, where she was staying with her husband. I don't know if she still is, but at the time she was the highest paid television star in the world, making a lot more than David Letterman was getting on Late Night or Charlie Sheen was getting on Anger Management at that time. High profile interview. Unfortunately, I went out drinking the night before. I woke up. It was 8:55 am. I was at least 30 minutes away by cab. I raced out of bed so fast. I didn't even stop to brush my teeth. I took the toothbrush, toothpaste and mouthwash with me when I went to flag down a cab. In the passenger seat of the cab, I took a huge swig of mouthwash, realized belatedly that there was nowhere I could safely spit it out, so I spit it back into the bottle it had just come out of. Good times. The butch female taxi driver asked me why I was in such a panic. I said, I'm supposed to meet Judge Judy, the scariest woman on television. And as things stand I'm going to be at least 20 minutes late. The taxi driver listened in silence and said, yeah, you're fucked. You think you'll get fired? Thanks for the morale boost, butch taxi lady. On the way, I sent about a million text messages to Judge Judy's publicist telling her I was dropping my daughter to the crash. I was involved in a collision. My car had to stay at the scene of the accident, so I'm en route in a cab. Bullshit excuse I figures Judge Judy will see through in a split second, not least because all of these text messages were sent after I was already late for the appointment. Get to the hotel. It turns out, miracle of miracles, that the PR person for the local TV station has also not shown up. So while Judge Judy and her team are obviously a little put out, I still end up looking like the more competent of the two local media representatives. Despite being 20 minutes late, I had a long chat with Judge Judy. She was on holiday and completely unlike the person you see on TV. Totally chilled out and good humored. She introduced me to her husband, who was an ex-judge himself and, again, the nicest person you could ever meet. She was telling me how they each had children from previous relationships and good relationships with their exes. So they had a proper blended family, which was the first time I'd ever heard that phrase, and it made total sense. I tried to ask her about one or two specific cases I'd seen in episodes, but she was just like, listen, we record entire seasons back to back in 2 weeks. I don't remember any of the specific cases. It's all a blur. Fair enough. We chatted for about an hour and they wished me well and I left. 2 minutes after I'd gone, I got a call from my newspaper. They wanted me to go back and pose for a picture with Judge Judy to go with the article. She was in another interview at this point, so I had to wait in the lobby for about an hour replying to emails on my phone. When I got back up to her hotel suite, her husband answered the door. He greeted me warmly by name and asked me if I'd heard back from the cops about the car at my daughter's crash. The cops? My car? My daughter? I didn't own a car or have a daughter. What the hell was he talking about? Thankfully, I belatedly remembered the bullshit story I'd given them 2 hours earlier and said I was going to collect the car right after I left here. They seemed to believe me, or maybe they were just being polite. I don't watch her show, but they were both very nice people to me when they didn't have to be. I was invited to have my case heard by the delightful Judge Judy, but tragically had just cancelled my small claims lawsuit 2 days previous. The producer called me and was like, "Didn't you get my letter?" And there apparently was one emailed overnight to me at my front door by the time she called. For a while I had it framed because it was hilarious, but I was honestly more upset I was deprived of a Judge Judy opportunity than the fact that this guy's dog had bitten my face unprovoked and not paid for my emergency room visit. F you, Cody. Anyway, they will pay to fly you out and stay, including any pertinent witnesses. Judge Judy is stacked. I don't remember if this was Judge Judy, but my all-time favorite case was one that started with a girl listing all the things this guy allegedly stole from her car or something. She says something like headphones, to which the guy replies along the lines of, "Ma'am, there were no headphones in there." Case closed. It was hilarious, scripted or not. Not Judge Judy, but I worked for the Judge Mathis show. Everything is completely real, and the case is really decided by Judge Mathis. It's technically arbitration, so that's how the claims get settled. The funniest case while working there, a woman who produced homemade dildos sued another woman for $30 worth of unpaid merchandise. During her case, the plaintiff handed Judge Mathis a briefcase filled with dildos. They cut to a perfect shot of Judge's face looking into the case with his face looking like zero. Got more stories if peeps are interested. Edit. The show pays the small claims amount for the defendant if the plaintiff wins. So everyone appearing on the show has nothing to lose except their ego. Unfortunately, there are a lot of drug users who appear on the show. It wasn't uncommon for a case to be scrapped because the defendant was too loaded to make it out to film. One lady was so high, she escaped her green room and ran to the main lobby of the building wearing nothing but a loose shirt. She was done all ducking it, and titties flying everywhere. Another lady somehow arrived at the wrong hotel when the private driver dropped her off downtown. We get a frantic phone call from her saying she's lost in the bad side of the city. We located her in the shopping district, nicest area. High-off rambling nonsense to other people on the sidewalk. Got so much of the job was like herding effing cats. One nice thing about the show is that if the defendant is willing, the show will also cover most of the cost of rehab. Quite a few people take the show as an opportunity to erase their outstanding debt to the plaintiff and try to get clean. I think like plaintiffs on the show have an 80% win rate. I lent a co-worker $500 for what she said was how much she was short on buying a new car. Turns out she had a severe gambling problem, something apparently everyone in the office knew about except for me. Of course, despite having a written contract saying when she would pay me back, I was forced to resort to small claims court. Shortly after I filed, I received a letter from the producers of Judge Judy offering to settle the matter on the TV show. I explained I had a very detailed written contract with my co-worker, and therefore I didn't think the case would be all that exciting as it was open and shut. I later wished I hadn't been so rash, as despite winning my case, so in theory I was supposed to get to garnish her wages, but since we were taxi drivers who paid a lease for the vehicles we drove, thus no salary to garnish, never got a dime. I certainly would have won on Judge Judy and the show would have paid me, plus I could have embarrassed my co-worker on national TV. Not Judge Judy, but divorce court. Got paid $400 a free trip, flight, hotel to Washington D.C. and our episode never even aired. My boyfriend already posted about my experience, but I thought I'd give my side. At 18 years old, I loaned my ex $5,000 to purchase a truck. We had a contract and I was on the title. We had been dating for almost 4 years and I had a lot of trust in him and his family. As it goes, he buys the truck and we break up 2 weeks later. He must forged my signature because they got my name taken off the title. His parents had possession of the contract and refused to give it to me. For almost 2 years I tried to work something out as adults for him to repay me. I finally gave up Enough was enough. I wanted my money back. I filed at my local small claims court. A few days later I get a call from a California number. I didn't answer, thinking it was a spam call. Turns out, it was a producer from Judge Judy wanting to talk to me about my case. Due to anxiety and the fear of somehow losing my case on TV, I ignored it. A week later I received a priority mail letter from the producer, once again asking that I contact them and some details about the process. I decided to step outside my comfort zone and just give her a call. She was super nice and made me feel like I could really do this. I agreed to come on the show. We emailed back and forth for a few days. Once she got my ex and his mom to agree to come on the show, the ball started rolling. The producer and the legal team emailed me a list of everything I should bring. Bank statements, the contract template, text messages, really anything I had that could help prove my case. The producer also informed me of some small details, such as not wearing white or any prints. They show up funny on the camera. You're also not allowed to wear any logos. Our process went super quick. We agreed to the show and the next week they had everything set to leave. Plane tickets, hotel and driving situations. They pay for your plane ticket, your hotel, and a driving company to take you to and from the airport and the studio. They also give you $75 as petty cash for your trip. Our taping was on the third and last day of our trip. We arrived, went through security, and were put in a nice room while we waited. We also got to see a makeup artist for a few minutes to apply makeup good for the bright lights. When it was our turn, they gave us a rundown of where to walk, what to do, where to stand, etc. Then they sent us out and turned on the cameras. The audience members get paid about $20 to sit there for the episodes shot that day. Judge Judy was talking to me first, got some background information, and had me explain the situation from my POV. After she heard my side, she started going in on my ex. Mind you, I had at least 30 pages of evidence. He had a torn piece of printer paper. After being unsatisfied with his ability to answer her, she called his mom up. His mom attempted to defend him, but really just made a fool of herself too. I sat in complete awe as a woman I've watched on TV since young force verbally curb stomped two people who had been taking advantage of me and getting away with it for almost 2 years. My ex was also physically abusive, which the producers knew about and had me send them documentation of that, pictures, texts. This didn't get brought up in the hearing, but I brought it up in my interview. It was really smooth sailing for me for the rest of the taping. It lasted about 10 to 15 minutes. After calling my ex and his mom grifters and unwitted, Judge Judy awarded me $5,000. You leave all your evidence, phone, etc. on the podium and they bring it out to you after your interview. As soon as you exit the doors seen on the show, there is a large back room with the crew. Right there you do your interview. A man asked me a bunch of questions and my ex and his mom sat about 10 feet away seething at me. If looks could kill. But I was nodding on endorphins because it went better than I could have ever hoped. So it didn't bother me. I didn't see his interview until it aired, as I left right away for the airport. Definitely one of the greatest experiences of my life, and I'm so grateful my boyfriend encouraged me to take a chance on myself. If this taught me anything, it's step outside your comfort zone, and for the love of God, don't loan people money.